強くなければ生きていけないって言いますけど、人間ってどれくらい強くなればいいんでしょうね。
さあな。こっちが聞きたいぐらいだ。
俺は君を信用したい。俺だって同じさ。お前のことを信用したい。
In recent times, there's a common belief within the community concerning the topic of what is considered peak Rider episodes. You know, this word, peak, I think is often used to describe this indescribable high you get when watching or consuming a piece of media that just moves your heart. Something that just resonates with all of your five senses and hits off that dopamine signal in your brain, stimulating a powerful reaction of both excitement and joy. It's this feeling of rush that pushes our anticipation to continue consuming whatever piece of media that enters our sight. Kamen Rider Faiz' 17th episode is often cited for many as one of the best Kamen Rider episodes in the fandom, or at the very least, a very highly rated episode when discussing fan favorite Heisei episodes. But what makes it so well liked and widely regarded as a peak episode? But for me, this very episode holds a hidden treasure not discussed a lot in the community. Everyone's always talking about the destination of the moment earned, but no one is talking about the journey of how we got there. And within this encapsulated journey, the very experiences of human struggle to overcome tragedy in order to reach this destination of attaining one's desired dream becomes excellently illustrated through the eyes of the two main characters themselves. Kiba and Takumi may seem like the polar opposites of one another, but this claim couldn't be further from the truth itself. I think a lot can be said about the depth of these two characters. For example, they both share the same unease regarding the fear of rejection. One fears rejection in the form of betraying others, while the other drowns in this unease of others betraying him. These forms of rejection may seem different, but the end result is all the same. This is the story of two characters intertwined by fate itself. A story about two different perspectives carrying out individual vows and promises. Promises and vows are beliefs built and shaped by escalating events within your own understanding of the universe. It is an oath you swore to carry on in your heart, and by remaining true to whatever we choose to uphold, it becomes our own way of living then on. This way of living becomes such a powerful force that we must remain steadfast in upholding whatever it is that ignites our heart to act the way we do. But such a powerful force like that even has its weaknesses. A weakness that is so strong it is unforeseen by the human scope of our own eyes. That is, our own mentality. There's always going to be this unknown variable that we never even fathom the possibility of it ever happening. This unknown variable comes in many shapes and forms. It could even be invisible to the naked eye itself. It is an obstruction that hinders the very narrative we build upon for our own way of living. If we choose to be weak and succumb to this unknown variable, then our own promises and vows will fade into nothingness, and thus our own initial way of living itself will be denied. Nothing will remain besides a false existence. But if we can remain strong, we can continue to live the way we choose. But with that being said, this very dilemma is brought into question with Faiz' 17th episode. How strong should humanity be? Heading into the episode itself, we begin with a small recap right where the previous episode ended. Takumi gets his ass completely handed to him by his trust-so-worthy friend Kusaka. After this crushing defeat, our main protagonist finds himself nursed back to health by his friends. He is then questioned by the fact that he absolutely refused to fight an enemy orphanage. This brings up confusion to all of his allies, but most importantly, it is a choice that perplexes our protagonist the most. To recap one more time, Takumi was saved in earlier episodes by Yuka, who is secretly the Crane Orphanage, someone who falls under the same category of the enemies Faiz has been dealing with, the very same enemies that indiscriminately killed their victims without remorse and sometimes even without reason. Inui Takumi, a wanderer without any real determination, finds himself in this dilemma as Faiz, a protector who fights to protect the dreams of others. Takumi, despite being a rough person on the outside, holds a very unique interior. Being a person without a dream, He soon realizes the importance these aspirations hold. As someone with no dreams or driving force of passion, he came to understand the importance of what makes life worth living and also worth fighting for, and that in itself is the importance of dreams. Seeing people around him reach for their aspired goals brought a sense of joy to his heart. Even when he himself didn't have anything to strive for, he instead loved to see others do what he cannot. This is why he chose to be this protector of dreams. To fight is to protect, and to protect is to fight. It is an idea built upon hypocrisy. Up until now, Takumi himself has been following this belief as it comes naturally as he breathes. We're all wired with this sense for survival. We don't think about our enemies in heated moments, nor do we even wonder about any other outcomes besides prioritizing our own survival first and foremost. But now, Takumi has diverged from this instinct to fight and protect, being unable to move from this obstruction, thinking about the orphanoch that saved him. Up to this point, all the orphanochs he's encountered so far all have malicious intent. But what about this one? He couldn't bring himself to classify Yuka as the same category as the other foes he's fought so far. But to classify an individual based on the actions of a group is a bit too ignorant and narrow-minded, don't you think? Now, Takumi's worldview of his enemies is flipped upside down. He doesn't know what to make sense of anymore besides being buried in his own thoughts. With this dilemma opens up a new perspective. If orphanochs really do have a heart just like the person that saved me, what do I do now? If they really hold feelings of compassion that carry the same weight as the ones of human life, can orphanochs really be changed and saved? Is this naive way of thinking that bridges Takumi's belief that both orphanoch and human lives alike hold an equal amount of weight to them and should be treated as such. This very thought soon immobilizes him for the very simple fact that he doesn't know what to think of what's next. He's stuck between this feeling of compassion for the sake of both races being held in high regard, but at the same time, this very regard for life creates a fluctuation in his heart. He simply cannot allow his fist to be stained anymore with the blood of his enemies if he realizes they too contain a heart, just like him and the other humans he's fought to protect thus far. And if they do indeed have a heart, then it opens up a gap for understanding. This is why Takumi refuses to even answer his friends. He remains silent because he himself is afraid of the answers that will come out of his lips, afraid of not knowing what to do next with his newfound compassion for his enemies. Without uttering words of any importance, he becomes stuck. Perhaps this form of miscommunication is a way of protecting himself, but in doing so has unintentionally caused one of his worst fears to come true. Takumi's worst fear is the fear of betraying others. In his moment of wallowing in self-pity, he has forgotten the promise and vow he swore to his friends long ago. That very promise was to remain as Faiz, the protector and rightful owner of the belt. The only person that his friends believed that could always protect and save them through all means is now reduced to just a pitiful sight. Then we get to Kiba, the secondary protagonist of the show. Kiba, by all means, is the direct opposite of Takumi. He's a very kind and easygoing individual who tries his best to listen to others. But this very kindness would have its limits. The moment anyone betrays his expectations, anger would erupt like a thundering storm. This trait is one that is stirred by emotions of frustrations regarding a high emphasis on trust. To Kiba, trust is everything to him. This idea of trust comes in the form of sincerity. A form of sincere trust affirms both honest communication and a strong bond. Those worthy enough of upholding this very idea are met with Kiba's pure-hearted compassion, but those that don't, well, they are instead met with this ruthless form of a punishment, often stemming from his incredible passionate anger. Kiba is also another renegade orphanoch. Unlike his fellow comrades that actively take part in reducing the population of the human race, Kiba instead outright rejects this way of living and vows to protect humanity. Kiba's side of the story begins with him helping out Morishita, who was attacked by an orphanoch earlier. Funny enough, Morishita is actually the younger brother of Chie, Kiba's ex-fiancée who he killed in the second episode. Morishita appears before Yuji to find the culprit behind his sister's untimely death, without ironically knowing the person he's been looking for was in front of him the whole time. Everything hits Kiba at once, now that he is left to deal with the fallout of his past sin. Now, one of Kiba's best traits that is not talked about enough is his willingness to fix and atone for his own mistakes. Way back during the second episode, Kiba faces immense shock over his recent choices thus far and the inability to accept how much life has changed now that he has transformed into an Orphanaut. In his frail state of confusion, he decides to atone for his sins by literally trying to self-delete himself. Kiba's trait to fix his wrongings honestly stood out the most for me in Faiz. It also makes him more human than Orphanaut. But now, surprisingly, he has nothing left to say, or rather, there's nothing he can do to even fix. Kiba does not confess by confirming his sins to a person he had unintentionally wronged in his moments of brazen fury, nor does he outright take responsibility for it. Morishita's presence in this episode is really interesting. For one, he is a direct victim of the Orphanaut's twisted mission, and by all means, he is accurately a representation of someone that falls under Kiba's oath to protect against the Orphanauts. But at the same time, he's also a representation of the ironic contradiction of Kiba's way of life. Kiba, he places a huge emphasis on honesty and trust, but at this moment, Kiba can't trust himself to actually tell Morishita the truth, nor is he even honest about it. Kiba swore to protect humanity from the Orphanauts, but when you look at it at a certain angle, it is ultimately Kiba who indirectly caused Morishita to be placed in this situation in the first place. In a very twisted way, Kiba's actions as an Orphanaut has come back to now haunt his present, as it indirectly challenges his worldview and vows. Instead, Kiba gives up his ex-fiance's memento as a sign of trying to forget about her and his past life to the very victim in front of him. And this choice, actually, I think is met with a lot of confusion for me as a viewer. What happened to the same person who tried to atone and fix everything from his past misdeeds? What happened to the same person who once rejected the reality in front of him to fight for what he truly believes to be right? For someone as noble as Kiba seems on the outside, one would expect him to be sincere and truthful in this revelation. But it's ironic how Kiba expects this from everyone else. However, now, in this heated moment, it is himself, who fails his own expectations that he has set for others. His fear and shock is so great that the once strong and noble man is now immobilized by the thoughts of accepting his mistakes for the past actions he had caused. This very guilt is what is stopping Kiba from communicating, and in order to protect himself, he stays silent from the shock of Morishita's determination to die alongside his beloved sister's killer. This is Kiba's form of an unknown variable, an obstruction that comes as a contradicting presence to his way of living, a presence that acts as a form of a ghost for his past deeds as an Orphanaut, while now testing his next course of action as a human in the present. Kiba always swore to protect humans from the evil deeds of the Orphanauts, but what will he do now when it is him who's put into the shoes of the very same foes he promised to fend off against? They say that the human race should be strong, but how strong should we be? Of course, it's time for the best part of the episode, which begins with this very question proposed by Kiba as he crosses paths with Inui. In this small time frame, the situation of two starts to intersect. I think this is the first time Kiba and Takumi actually interacted wholeheartedly. Well, I mean, they had met before, like a few times in the show, but we never got to see how the personality traits reflected off one another in its full length. Alright, going back to what I was saying, Kiba and Takumi are this pair of fate, a pair that exists to be a foil to one another. If one rises, the other falls, and if one falls, then the other rises. And even now, their respective struggles exist as a mirror to one another. This is how I always saw their relationship. But episode 17 details what would happen if these two are now in the same predicament as the other. They are both tested for their own way of living with unique forms of unaccounted variables. Takumi even sees how an Orphanaut can develop love for the human race, while Kiba sees how humanity can delve into the demonic grasp of an Orphanaut's lifestyle. How can one or the other even hope to rise when both of them have fallen towards the same inescapable mental trap that blinds both their way of living and promises. A space of isolation now fills their environment. As the two are left to think about their next course of actions, Takumi drowns himself in his own thoughts, thinking about the events leading up to this point, nothing but regret forming in his own mind. And while this happens, Kiba enters the scene, trying to offer moral support. This very action sparks the ripple of discussion between the two, and would serve as an example of their duality in a show going forward. Both our horse and wolf boys are willing to listen to the other in their times of trouble, but the decision of why they aren't talking about it is something that defines their character traits really well. Kiba and Takumi both decide that their issues are something that cannot be fixed because it has already happened. What has already happened in the past cannot be fixed, nor can it be repaired. But is it really okay to leave things as is? To further complicate things, another question is brought up by Kiba himself. They say that the human race should be strong, but how strong should we be? To which Takumi answers with a simple, I don't know. This is a question that the show presses the viewers to think about, but never outright answers right away. Within this very small time frame of isolation, we are taken into the glimpses of the psychological factors of how the pair tackle their individual forms of hardship. However, what happens next would ultimately prove the deciding factor of the individual choices Takumi and Kiba would make. The moment of truth arises when the time to go reaches the beating hearts within the pairing of fate. Reality comes crashing down as now they are left to deal with the fallout of the events unfolding before their very own eyes. Both Kiba and Takumi are now faced with their worst fears being made into reality, and the unfolding events exist to punish both Kiba and Takumi for their wavering doubts and maybe even their mistakes. Now, I use that term punish loosely because the very doubts and fears that both immobilize Takumi and Kiba are honestly very human, and to be truthful, it is very valid to feel that way. It is human to feel immobilized by these doubts in our head. And of course, it is human to shield ourselves from accepting the world in front of us sometimes. It may seem like a selfish idea I'm trying to put out, but sometimes it's just how we humans really are. These things are part of the human experience, but what truly defies us is what we do next after all these troubling dilemmas. If humanity were to be obstructed by these trials, then what is next for us as a race? Takumi's doubts are brought to reality. If he doesn't move on from his own obstructions and his own self-pity, people are going to die. The same people he loved, seeing achieving their dreams and life's goals, will all perish to the sands of time. These victims all had dreams and places to reach, all with their own individual stories of why they set out to achieve what they do. This is why Takumi himself was so adamant about being the de facto user of Faiz. He realizes how beautiful each life can be, but also how fickle something so precious, such as life, can be easily taken away within a moment's notice. Holding the ashes of fallen sacrifice, made to illustrate what happens if Takumi doesn't awake, he begins to move once again. But what about Kiba? Realizing his own mistakes, having played a big part in the reason for Morishita's rampage, Kiba still remains trapped by his own mental blockage. I once said earlier in this video that Kiba vows to protect humanity from the ill intentions of the Orphanox and Smart Brain, and at this point into the episode, Kiba actually had the perfect opportunity to fully live up to the promise he swore to himself. But instead, this actually doesn't happen at all. This situation stakes, everything was in place for Kiba's moment of triumph. But instead of a warrior experiencing the moments of magnificence against turmoil, all that remains is just a faint-hearted soul without glory. Because he loses against his inner battle against himself from the issues plaguing his mind, Kiba succumbs to his own grief, failing to see through the issues clouding the truth. And once again, if the best part of the episode started with Kiba and Takumi becoming closer through isolation, then surely it will end with a rift in ideals by illustrating the differences in these times of dilemma. Kiba falls into his own spiral of regret, while Takumi actively rises by transforming his own regret into action. Because of Kiba's personality to accept things as is, he fails to change his mindset around his own personal sorrow. Him not being able to do anything when the moment calls for it is a clear indication that he himself has lost the inner battle. Contrasting with Takumi, who instead grows and rises with this new ordeal by defeating the strongest opponent he's faced at this point, himself. It was never the Orphanox or anything of that matter stopping him. No, it was always he himself that was the obstacle. But now, through defeating his own inner self-pitying issues, he has proved how strong his spirit really was by getting up to fight once again. Usually, these type of episodes will have the writer attain a new power-up in the shape of a newer form or, I don't know, something along the lines, something like that. Takumi does gain a new power-up. Well, I don't know if I can call it that, since this power-up isn't something similar to other formulaic episodes of Heisei entries, with the specific writer going through leaps and bounds, achieving a new form and all that. I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys know what I'm talking about. Takumi's determination bestows him the ability to not only throw hands, but to also remain strong enough to fully articulate flexibility into his own ideals regarding who he should fight and those he should protect. He doesn't deal in absolutes, but rather he provides a sense of flexibility around it. What I mean is, fighting to protect is a double-edged sword. At first, it may be the only thing he knew starting out as Faiz, but eventually he is able to not only make way for dialogue, but also understand that there are some individuals outside this field of conversation, beings that exist as outliers to communication. And once this happens, the hands of Faiz must be used to fight so that no one else besides him must bear the sin of weighing blood. Takumi as Faiz is beginning to understand that this concept must be articulated with caution. There will be times when communication will be essential, but there will also come a time when the foundations of Thesis are needed. A concept that will prove ultimately necessary for the themes of coexistence, which Faiz places a huge emphasis on later in the show's run. We must not remain weak and hasty to answer the world's trials and questions in absolutes. Rather, we must find other ways to justify the means of the world's many variabilities through a flexible way of action. And what better way to showcase this concept than Takumi's revival as Faiz? Takumi's growth in this episode grants him the ability to choose what action to take going forward. With this realization, Takumi now promises to carry out the sin of dyeing his fist in the blood of his enemies as he takes it upon himself to be Faiz. All this sadness of taking a life in order to protect another? Everything that comes with being Faiz, he chooses to endure all of that because what matters most is the lives of the dreamers he fights for. Takumi proves how strong the human spirit must be through indirectly answering the proposed question brought up many times in this video thus far. He was able to once again stand victorious against the trials he's faced, staying true to his own way of living, while also learning new perspectives along the way, aiding him in his journey and development. The human spirit is something invincible to others that can only be shown and expressed through the actions of one's will. And what is being expressed is the powerful force of one's ability to overcome the contradictions of his own way of life. Now, I was going to end the video here, but I just say that this episode will eventually pay off in Faiz's later half. But speaking of Takumi's high regard for the lives of Orphanox and humans alike, later on we will see the same issues be repeated. With Sawada, Takumi's beliefs would soon be tested once again, but this time it is used to reframe a possible downfall of coexistence by actively once again punishing Takumi for his belief. Because of the bullshit with Kusaka and everything, Takumi in turn lost his heart for a time and almost very well became someone similar to Kusaka. If Takumi here was able to see through the potential kindness Orphanox contained, then later it would make sense for the writing to be turned upside down once again and make him now see their potential to be evil. This flips the script upside down as the once compassionate protector now potentially turns into someone who actively wants to destroy all Orphanox for the actions of a select few while ignoring the other pure-hearted ones that don't share the same idea of violence. It is this twisted thought of mutual destruction that plagues the step towards coexistence and even peace itself. Once again, this is a topic for another time. As for Kiba, the speech about losing one's heart and soul is tragically poetic, as we will realize it would happen to him much later on in the story. That's also another potential video for next time, and maybe, who knows, it might be one I really want to do soon enough. Well then guys, until next time.